video where she has to tell us her body count. Where do you want to begin, man? Because I love talking about the Clintons. I feel like everyone's moved on from them, and I don't think they should.
Okay, well, yeah, and my background is also as a historian. I worked in higher education, teaching history for years. So this study of the Clinton, well, I done a previous study of Obama because, I'm a liberal, but I'm kind of disgusted with the corruption in the Democratic Party and the kind of candidates that we get in that party. So, and I did a study of Obama and his foreign policy, and yeah, my specialty is more foreign policy issues, which tend to get neglected. So, the Clinton book kind of followed on the heels of my critical analysis of Obama and his foreign policy. And in both figures, I found that their background was really, shady. I mean, as far as like Obama, my book goes into on him how, I mean, the whole story he gave about his family and his memoir, there's so many inconsistencies. And really, Obama's family was connected to the CIA, and so was Bill Clinton. That's one common thread. And, many people will say, the intelligence agencies really run American politics from behind the scene. And I mean, you can see that with these two guys. I mean, Clinton appears to have been recruited in the CIA when he was a student at Oxford. Cordmeyer Jr., who was a big shot in the CIA, said we recruited him. He got drunk or something one night and admitted openly. And this was reported in Harper's Magazine, although it seems to be forgotten today. And Clinton was a roommate with Strobe Talbot when he was a student, a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. Although it should be noted, Clinton never graduated. He was accused of sexual assault. And there was a report on this, and they said he was there to party, not to study. But his roommate, Strobe Talbot, was from a Yale Skull and Bones family and a CIA-connected family. His uncle had been the Secretary of the Air Force, who had done all kinds of favors for the CIA. And the two were sent on a mission to Moscow and Russia to smuggle Nikita Khrushchev's memoirs, because Khrushchev had denounced Stalin, and that was good for U.S. Cold War, propaganda. And then, I go in the book into the whole Mina affair. And when Clinton was governor of Arkansas, he oversaw a major CIA arms smuggling operation to the Nicaraguan Contras out of Mina, Arkansas, and it also involved drug smuggling. And I did a lot of research on that and covered, I guess, new information. Yeah, well, and I think I mean, he hoodwinked the public. He created this image that he was this guy out of the 60s, into sexual liberation, and that he'd been part of the anti-war movement. But really, there's strong evidence that he was an FBI or CIA informant on the anti-war movement. So, I mean, he was always working for the establishment and the CIA, but they crafted this image of him, and it hoodwinked a lot of people. Because, in my book, I quote from Wenner, the guy who founded Rolling Stone, which is, this iconic 60s countercultural magazine, and he had an op-ed. He's like, vote for Clinton. Finally, somebody of our generation is going to take the reins of power. I think he was fooled. And then, I go into how Clinton kind of spun military intervention. I mean, it was a turning point in American political history because you had a pretty strong lobby at the end of the Cold War for a more peace-oriented foreign policy. And even Robert McNamara, the architect of the Vietnam War, testified before Congress that we need a new, now that the Cold War is over, the Soviet Union is defeated, it's time for a new peace dividend. We should cut the military budget and spend, more on human needs.
Oh, God, I wish, right?
Clinton developed this concept of humanitarian intervention, like that we have to go in and stop genocide. And he got all these liberals to support military intervention, and he ultimately escalated the military budget and set the ball rolling to where we are today. It's a point I would agree. It's run by the marketing industry, so they just create these characters for public consumption. And I mean, on the liberal side, I think the goal is to get liberals to ultimately support basically, Republican type policy or, militaristic foreign policy. So they package it as, humanitarian intervention, and they create this kind of image that enabled these figures to sell the war more effectively. When really, they're also, really creation. Like in the case of Clinton and Obama, I think both were really creations of the intelligence agencies and have background and close connection to them. And then when they were president, like I think Leon Panetta, who was the director of the CIA, said, "Well, Obama gave us everything we wanted when he was the president." And it's similar with Clinton. Like he revived the powers of the CIA, and there were all kinds of shady covert operations that were being run in those years, including the Balkans conflict, which I go into, and illicit arms smuggling operation that was similar in many ways to the Iran Contra. That was a violation of the arms embargo to the Croats, and stuff in Central Africa that was going on under his watch. So, but it all started with that shady Mina operation to smuggle arms and drugs to the Contras in Central America. And my thought on this issue is that they're very skilled at psychological warfare and manipulating people, manipulating public opinion, and getting people ultimately to support policies that are against their own interests and against the interests of humanity, but packaging it in a way. They know how to tap into people's psychology, and they employ experts, from the advertising industry and psychological experts to achieve that. And yeah, you get liberal Democrats who present themselves as these humane, great humanitarian figures doing the most abhorrent things imaginable. In my book, I go into the early chapters deal with his rise to power in Arkansas, and he was bankrolled by the three major powers in the state: Walmart, Tyson Chicken, and Stevens Investment House, which was the largest hedge fund outside of Wall Street, and is intricately tied with the CIA. They bankrolled his career, and he adopted anti-union positions from the beginning of his career, although he would give very nice speeches before the AFL-CIO to make it seem like he was their friend and to get their vote and donations, but then he would stab them in the back every time. And the head of AFL-CIO in Arkansas, J. Bill Becker, said, "Yeah, Clinton, he'll pat you on the back and then piss down your leg. We know him all too well." And so it started from the beginning of his career, and he shifted the Democratic Party. I think he saw on a practical level that organized labor was in decline, and Democrats couldn't be successful and couldn't bank on support from organized labor anymore. That would be enough to counter the Republicans and their support from large corporations. So he courted the large corporations, and he allied himself with the military-industrial complex. And don't forget, he expanded NATO. I mean, I blame him for starting a new Cold War, and this disaster we're in right now in Ukraine really has its roots in the Clinton era with his disastrous decision to expand NATO. But that was driven against the promises of George H.W. Bush that they wouldn't. They had promised the Russians that the U.S. would not expand NATO, but Clinton's the one to expand it to 3 countries in Eastern Europe. And that set the ball rolling for the new Cold War, poisoned U.S.-Russian relations. But it was because of his connection and courting money from the large defense contractors who give as much or more now to Democrats than Republicans.
Yeah. And it's like hilarious. And like what does it take for someone to be labeled a warmonger when she brags about assassinating Muammar Gaddafi and all that stuff? But yeah, I mean, like, the Clintons did so much damage to this country, and they just, like, you can get through it. Like, Reagan did damage. People love to rewrite that guy's history, right? They love to make him look like the good guy. Was not. I mean, he really ramped up the Cold War too. Like, we could have gotten out of that a bunch of times. He decided not to. Then George Bush is obviously a George Bush. I mean, CIA lied about his services. He has like 90 stories about getting shot down. Then, of course, there's a perfect picture of him. I mean, it's such bullshit, dude. Him and his wife, that's all weird stuff. And then Clinton comes through as this kind of can play saxophone and just brings in all these horrible, horrible things, man. Like, really just destroys our media, destroys our banks, destroys our commerce. And like, for some reason, people in this town love this guy, and I just don't get it. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, what you play saxophone? Arsenio, was it? Arsenio
yeah,
Hall? Was
yeah. It's like, oh my God, he's one of us.
So funny.
First of all, never, like, how many times you see you ever meet a saxophonist? They're a little weird, Doc, okay? Keep
Boy,
it up.
that was the time, huh? Arsenio Hall was on the air. I mean,
Yeah, you got a warmonger just playing the sax. He's like, yeah, it's like so crazy to me.
bizarre
So
world.
crazy.
Well, and I think they didn't know who he was. I mean, that was really covered up what he had done, the corruption, because I go into that in the first few chapters of the book, and it kind of astounded me. And, I did a lot of research in Arkansas. I was able to interview whistleblowers, and I did research at the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, where there had been a group of graduate students who were trying to expose the truth about the Mina affair, and they deposited their papers there. Anyway, there's just so much material on that, what he was doing there, and Hillary played a key role because she worked for the Rose Law Firm, and they were involved in they represented these banks and the Stephen Investment House that was laundering all the drug money. And Clinton set up this economic development agency that was giving loans to like military contractors for this smuggling operation. And the CIA was even shaking down local gun owners to get weapons to be sent to the Contras. And this was really a major CIA covert operation he presided over that corrupted. Arkansas became so corrupt under his leadership. And then, as you say, liberals were mesmerized in the election with this guy because he could play the saxophone. I mean, it was all just for show. I mean, this was a really dirty guy from the beginning of his career, and we saw that play out through his presidency and even post-presidency with all we've seen with the Clinton Foundation and the corruption associated with that.
And the
Warren Commission?
Yeah, I think it was the one guy that voted the other way, right? If I'm not wrong, it's something along the lines of that. And he went to the airport, got in a plane, he was never seen again. And the room,
that's Hale Boggs. Yeah, I know about that. I actually wrote an article about that.
And
Hale Boggs was part of the Warren Commission, but he developed misgivings about its conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald was, the lone assassin, and he was starting to, I think, speak out about it. And he was getting in a very high position. He was the Speaker of the House. And it was toward the Nixon. There was the Watergate proceeding were starting, so he could have even become potentially a president who was going to reopen the investigation. And then he died in a plane crash that looked like foul play. Yeah, and Bill Clinton picked him up at the airport. Now, there's no evidence
How crazy is that?
Was involved, but it does seem a bit odd. Although Clinton was very young at that age, so.
But he was like the fact that right there now we see pictures of him with Kennedy, right? And now he's picking up a guy that is already having problems with the CIA, which fits into exactly what you were talking about, Jeremy, is that they were grooming this guy early. So now they're using him. That's the earliest.
He had talent. Clinton did have talent. He could go, and they said a guy said he could go to a town fair in Arkansas in the rural areas, and he could win over the audience. And they said from right away they knew this guy could go far. That he had that ability, and he could go to the AFL-CIO and he would win them over, but ultimately he would screw them, but he would get their vote. And he was a brilliant fundraiser, brilliant talker and socialite. So they saw the talent, and as you say, they groomed him. And he was connected. Winthrop Rockefeller was the governor of Arkansas in the 1960s, and Clinton had a family connection with him. So he may have been groomed also by the Rockefeller dynasty.
Of course, they have their hands on everything, and it gets down to this is data. Everything is data. Even back then when they didn't have computers, they had ways to assess data. And so now you're telling me this guy goes to Oxford, okay? They're probably watching. I bet you they just have these certain colleges where they're just watching everybody. Who's getting in trouble? Who's doing this? Okay. Oh, they watch the police report. Oh, did this student get in trouble? What did he get in trouble for? And what are his grades?
Also, the secret societies, dude. That's what I mean. They come with blackmail. It's built in. That's why they.
Yeah, you have to hump a pig or something like that.
There's rumors.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think Clinton was. Well, he was a good student at Georgetown, but then, as I say, he didn't graduate. He got the Rhodes Scholarship, but he's more of a party animal. But he made the connection, with Strobe Talbot. Well, at Georgetown, one of his professors, Carol Quigley, wrote a book called
really?
Yeah, the Anglo-American establishment, and was one of these CIA intellectuals who promoted rule by the Anglo-American banking elite. And so Clinton was a favored student. Clinton actually was one of the few to get an A in his course. I mean, he was a smart guy, but he was, like a party animal and womanizer. And actually, there's evidence he was a rapist. Then when he went to Oxford, yeah, he never graduated. And even at Yale, they said he wasn't a serious student. But he made the connection. Like in Oxford, he made a connection with Strobe Talbot, his roommate, who later, Talbot, they say, the godfather of Russiagate. And Talbot was served as the point man for Clinton's Russia policy in the State Department. And he was Time Magazine Russia editor, and he came from the CIA family. So it's these kind of connections. Yeah, Winthrop Rockefeller, Carroll Quigley, Strobe Talbot, and others that pushed him to the top. So,
Well, I hate to say because it was my favorite basketball team growing up, but Georgetown Hoyas, Patrick Ewing, Georgetown is a Jesuit school, and there's a lot of Jesuit secret society stuff coming out of there. So here he is. He goes to Georgetown with the belief everyone thinks he wants to be a lawyer, right? So he goes there and he's just dominating. He's doing great. He's now he goes there before Oxford, right? Or is that the same time? Or
yeah. No, he started at Georgetown, and Georgetown is a recruiting ground for the CIA. He did well. He was a good student, an undergraduate, but he had these womanizing tendencies. And by the time he went to Oxford, they said, well, the State Department had to do a report because he was accused of sexual assault by a student there, and he never graduated. And they wrote up a report, and the report said he was there more to party and network than to study.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's so many of us. We're like, I just want to go where there's more chicks than there are guys.
You would agree? I mean, he's a brilliant guy, though, right? Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think he is highly intelligent. He's brilliant as far as his social skills.
Yeah,
I think he is intelligent. He understands world affairs. I wouldn't say that about all U.S. leaders.
No.
I think like Joe Biden is not smart at all. Joe Biden was at the bottom of his law school class, but Clinton is smart. Yes.
Yeah, I agree too. But yeah, Biden's losing points every day too, IQ points. I mean, it's just going.
How it goes, man. And for him, it's just like so crazy. And like, I don't know, does your book get into any of the criminality of the Clintons, Whitewater, all that stuff?
Yeah, the first several chapters deal with his background when he was the governor of Arkansas. So I go into the Whitewater and the Mina affair and all the money laundering. And I think Hillary was integral in the money laundering in her position with the Rose Law Firm, particularly because she was representing Stevens and some of the banking houses that were laundering the money. And then I do go into the Whitewater. Yeah, and they really sold Jim McDougal. It showed their character. They sold him under the bus. I mean, they were involved in these illicit land deals, and then they just, he ended up going to prison for many years, and they got off. And he said something to that effect that the Clintons, have no loyalty or decency at all. And he ended up dying under very suspicious circumstances in prison. And
of course,
that he didn't get the right heart medication that he needed. And he knew all the secrets, all the corrupt and criminal things they did. So it was very convenient for him to die in prison.
Jeremy, for those who may not be familiar with Whitewater, can you tell us a little bit about what Whitewater exactly was? Because I think they hear the term, but they might not actually know the case.
Well, it was these land deal. The Clintons bought some land, and that was a place they were going to build vacation homes. And then when he was the governor, like he did a lot, I think people don't know a lot of the corrupt things he did. Like he actually would put in legislation or put in funding, like to build roads to connect to the land he had bought, so it would make it a viable enterprise. But then there was fraudulent activity associated with these land purchases, and that's what landed his partner Jim McDougal in prison. And Clinton was able to escape it, and he was using it like to funnel money for his own political campaigns. And it got even tied in with the Mina affair and this covert operation, particularly with the laundering of funds through these banks. And a lot of it was with the Stevens Investment House, who owned a lot of the banks in Arkansas. And then Hillary Clinton was representing him as a client and representing these banks. So she was involved in some of the fraudulent financial practices. And they should have gone to jail for a long time, but McDougal was the scapegoat.
So you keep mentioning Mania. What is it? What are you mentioning there? I'm sorry.
Oh, Mena, yeah, Mena, Arkansas is in western
Right.
Arkansas, and these are these clandestine arms smuggling flights that were run out of the airport. And they were also smuggling drugs, and the pilot was named
Oh,
Barry Seal.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, go
They
on.
made a movie about it starring Tom Cruise. But this was an operation to arm the Nicaraguan Contra. The CIA selected Arkansas because Bill Clinton was their asset. And I mean, because Congress had cut off aid. The Contras were counter-revolutionaries. There was a socialist revolution in Nicaragua in 1979. The U.S. and CIA had supported the corrupt Somoza dynasty for like 50 years. And then, the Reagan administration said about arming remnants of the Somoza government and counter-revolutionaries to try and overthrow the Sandinista government. But then Congress cut off aid in 1984 with the Boland Amendment. So that led to the Iran-Contra, where the CIA and Oliver North took it upon themselves to illicitly continue smuggling arms to the Contras to try and continue to attack and overthrow the Sandinistas. And they used Arkansas as a base. They even brought Contras for training. Like people around Mina saw the Latin American figures being trained like jungle warfare. And Clinton, Felix Rodriguez was a CIA agent who had been involved in the Bay of Pigs and the murder of Che Guevara. Apparently, he was so friendly with Clinton that he had a key to the governor's mansion, and he was spotted training some of the Contras around Mina. And then Sia was flying arms, but they were also flying drugs to make money out of this. They were bringing back drugs to fund some of these operations. And like from the research I did, they were actually shaking down local gun dealers to steal their guns to send to the Contras.
So
And
crazy, right? That's so
yeah,
crazy.